Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching this interview with Zanab from Season 3 of Love is Blind on the YouTube channel Jalay Slays with Anthony. Let's watch.
Duties has never ruined an appetito. So Cole asked for the footage during the reunion, right? He was like, if you have it, roll it. Afterwards, I went up to one of the producers and I was like, hi, I know which day it is. This is the day it was. It was the day we went to dinner. I'm in the yellow dress. It's a few hours before that. Please find it. Like, I had been asking, like, I had wanted it. Not that I have any say-so in production, but I knew it existed and I had wanted it in the actual show. But regardless, I don't produce it. So we both asked for it. You know, I've kind of had mixed feelings, but I'm glad it aired and people can, like, formulate their own opinions on it, right? I said what happened verbatim. The clip airs exactly as I said it did, like as what happened, right? I said what happened.
Okay, so she's talking about the Cuties flashback, and she says she has mixed feelings upon watching it after the reunion or during, because so she wouldn't have seen the clip until the show aired, right? And upon it airing, I think she's saying she has mixed feelings about it. And let's hear what she says more.
And people can, like, formulate their own opinions on it, right? I said what happened verbatim.
Right, and I said that during the flashback as well, that she did describe verbatim what he said. And the way she framed it, it sounded pretty bad. But when you saw it in context, at least to a lot of people, it didn't look as bad as the way she was framing it. I don't know. I guess what I would hope that she would say, and I just can't imagine because it almost never happens on these shows, I would just hope that if it is accurate the way that the mainstream narrative is about what happened, that I would hope that she would say, well, he did a lot of hurtful things, and looking back, I think at least at the time during the wedding and at the reunion, I was still kind of raw and a little harsh. I don't think I was the way that people think. You know, I wonder if another aspect to this, which is interesting to think about, is that the amount of commentary from the public, right? Which I'm just going to say it. Y'all aren't like that when you comment on my videos 99.9% of the time, but in other venues, I will see very extreme takes, very extreme interpretations and comments on what people say. Some people will even have both extremes in the same comment. You know, she's a piece of crap. She is bipolar, and Cole, I hate him too. You know, the real extreme kinds of things. So you can imagine after the show comes out that because I think she is trying to be more online. I think she's trying to be more on Instagram. So she's getting these comments. I don't know. And you could imagine that a lot of the comments that become the loudest are the most extreme. And they're comments that most people would say, well, that doesn't make any sense. And including myself, I would say, well, like, calm down. Like, yes, you could say a couple things, but not that far. It's unfair. It's mean. It's hurtful. It's baseless. And you could imagine that if, as a cast member, if you're getting a lot of hate from people, because you also imagine you're also getting a lot of positive comments, which is going to happen, right? And you're getting the positive comments, and then the main loudest voices on the other side that hate you are so ridiculous that you can just discount the whole thing. And you could imagine as a caster, because I've been there before as a content provider for over 14 years, I've experienced that, where exactly what I'm saying. And there's a temptation to just reject all the negativity because the loudest negativity is on its face ridiculous. And so you don't have an opportunity to hear those very, very rare voices that are more balanced, that might be a little bit more helpful. And you're gravitating towards a lot of the positive, because you'll either get 100% positivity or 100% negativity. You're not going to get a lot of people that are more balanced or centered or something. You're not going to get that. So you can imagine that you just say, well, I can disregard all the negativity, including what Cole says. And I'm getting all these, so I'm going to gravitate towards the positive comments. And then you can imagine that you would become even more dug in on your distorted perspective, right? And none of it, I'm guessing none of us are going to be on a show like this, but in real life, this happens as well, right? go through a breakup, and if you have friends that aren't particularly great with triangulation, when you complain to your friends about your previous partner, they're just going to agree with you the entire time. There's nothing wrong with agreeing with your friends, but there's something potentially not helpful about never providing some helpful triangulation comments, after the dust settles, and be like, well, I don't know, maybe you're hurt, or I don't know. So it's possible that for her, even among her friends and online, that she has even more reason to believe that she did zero things wrong. But what I would hope to see, based on my very loose hypothesis about what I saw, and I don't know if it's true, there are other hypotheses that I have as well, but if we go with the one that's at the top of my list, I would hope that she would say something like, I was hurt. It was a very raw time for me, that not only because my self-esteem was shredded by this man, just by the stuff that you saw. I mean, he was constantly talking about Colleen and saying I'm bipolar and passive aggressive. It was hard. I was pretty sure that he was wrong, but I don't know. It gets under your skin, and I've had stuff like this in my past as well, and I felt pretty bad about myself. It was a whirlwind. The cameras around. I'd never experienced that before. I was worried about my career, and should I marry this person? It was very confusing. There's a lot of things going on. The reunion, I intended on doing this other kind of thing, but then I got hurt and upset. I'm seeing his face again. It just triggered me, and I came out of the gate a little strong, but then I reeled it back, and I don't know. It's just a lot, and I could see how people would watch it in terms of what the edit was and conclude that I was kind of a jerk face, and I don't feel good about that. And I don't know what to say about it, but it's hard. I think that the people that are negative about me are taking it too far. I mean, if you've read the comments, like, boy, they're taking it way too far. But I don't feel great about what I did, but I think some of it was justified. But maybe in another couple years, after I recover further from this horrible time, I mean, it's been good as well, but there's some horribleness too. A couple years when I look back, maybe I'll cringe even more. I don't know. It seems likely that I will. It's hard for me to know what I'll cringe about, but yeah, I feel bad, but I also feel like there was some validity to what I was doing, and I don't know. That's just if I heard her say something like that, I think that would feel I'd be more optimistic about her. I'd be more optimistic about her healing process, about her differentiation, about her prospects in future relationships. Humility, understanding that we make mistakes, not making excuses, not getting too defensive about things, owning up to things while also not beating yourself up. I don't know. It's just kind of usually what I would hope to see. But I don't know. Maybe he was way more of a jerk face than the mainstream narrative is proposing, and everything I'm saying right now doesn't make any sense in reality.
The clip airs exactly as I said it did, like as what happened, right? I said what happened, word for word, it showed. Cole said it never happened, and then if you have it, air it.
True, yeah, he did say that. He said that never happened, which was wrong. I don't think he remembered it. Particularly most of what she's saying wasn't the verbatim of what she said. Most of the communication that she was saying was that he was constantly body shaming her, and he body shamed her about the cuties, about the oranges. And I think emotionally he's like, no, I didn't. I never body shamed you, which is, in terms of the mainstream narrative, that's what happened. He didn't intend on body shaming her and didn't go on a campaign to body shame her, even with the oranges. So yeah, I think emotionally he's like, that never happened, but it did in terms of the verbatim.
And somehow I was the liar, but I'm not getting into it with the internet. But yeah, no, I'm glad they used it, and people can, people see it both ways.
Right. So liar, but I'll see people do that they will assume that if someone is presenting behavior that is of the mainstream narrative of Zanab, they'll be like, oh, she's calculating, she's manipulative, she's Machiavellian, she's a psychopath, she's a sociopath, she's lying, she knows what she's doing. But that's never been what I have been. I mean, I've been accusing all the cast members of potentially lying about what they're, I think, pressured to do by the contract regarding, I didn't know what I was going to say until I got to the altar. And I have said that about Zanab, but I say that about all the no's that are said. Aside from Shayna, she was the one person I think that completely broke contract and said, no, I'm not going to wait until the altar to tell Kyle that I'm a no. I'm going to leave now. I mean, it's the first day she's like, yeah, I'm a. And anyway, so yeah, I would hope that people wouldn't say that she's a liar. I'd hope that they would at least give her the benefit of the doubt and say that she is telling her truth, right? We all have a truth. We all have a perspective. And that she wasn't lying. Can people lie? Yeah, she could have been lying. Yeah, but it didn't look that way to me. And so when people accuse her of lying, she can say, I wasn't lying. The internet can go to hell. And then she doesn't benefit from any balanced, rational feedback, right? She can just discount all the negativity because everyone's accusing her of lying when she knows that she's not.
Just like the tone in which it was perceived in, because when we watched it back, it seemed like he was being very playful. You know, like just a couple minutes before that, he seemed like really excited to go and meet your family in England. And he was like, oh, we can go here, we can go there. And you what?
My people.
Oh, I didn't say that, did I? I said your family.
No, but he said my people.
Interesting. Who knows? But it's possible that was coded racism from Cole. I think that's what Zanab is saying. But again, that's an interpretation. She would have more data than we would, but that isn't the way I interpreted it. And if I heard someone say that, I'm Asian. If my wife, who's white, said, hey, your people, are they coming? We're having Christmas together. She's like, well, are your people coming to Christmas? I personally wouldn't interpret that as my wife being racist against my Asian family. But she has more data than we do.
People.
Oh, okay. Did you take offense to that?
No. I mean, Middle East, but neither is England. But it's neither here nor there. But what I will say that, yes, Cole always had like this playful, which doesn't mean that things aren't hurtful that come out of his mouth, but was he joking around per usual of Cole? What I would say to that, my response, I think I said something like, yeah, do you have a problem with that? Or that okay with you or something, is a very defensive response and not the normal response of someone who's only been asked one time.
Okay. So she's agreeing that he wasn't intending on body shaming her. And she's saying that, well, if you watch in the scene, my response was defensive, had some hostility to it. My words, not hers, because he had repeatedly said things along those lines to me. And yeah, at least even on camera, we saw him say at least two things that could, if you just heard verbatim what was said, you'd say, whoa, that sounds pretty harsh. But when you see the scene, you're like, well, I don't know if that's really the way everyone would interpret it that way. But according to her, he said more things along those lines, which is possible. It's possible that he has some issue with food. It seems to be some focus on it or something. Who knows? But it's hard to be raised in American society and not have pretty sizable issue with food and body and stuff. So we could assume that he has at least some of that. But anyway, she's saying that, well, I got hostile because it wasn't the first time. All right.
Sure. What are you eating? Like,
yeah.
Be eating that. Do you want to eat this instead? Like, that's just not a normal response.
Okay, so there's a possibility that it happened a few times and that she's blowing it up out of proportion because of the way it felt to her, because she interpreted a certain way and or she has issues regarding that. She has her own voice in her mind that's putting her down, and then when he says something that could be interpreted as supporting that, and of course he was openly rejecting something about her physicality that he wasn't attracted to, which, will do a number on your self-esteem and will hurt your feelings anyway. So it's possible that she was misinterpreting it. It's possible that he did say a lot of things and that she kept saying, will you stop saying those things? And he either didn't care or was so oblivious to her needs or to his own issue regarding commenting on what people eat that he just kept at it, and that her stance now is, you weren't there. You weren't there for all the things. If you were, you would understand why I reacted that way. Do I think he was setting out to body shame me? I don't think so. But he was so inconsiderate of and I kept telling him, please stop saying those kinds of things. When you say that, it affects me this way. And he just kept doing it. It was weird. It was this jab. Then I started wondering, is he trying to say something now? Because why would you keep saying? So that's another possibility.
I mean, I've been called everything. I've been given death threats, wished terrible afterlives for my parents that have passed on. Like, the internet's disgusting. And it's.
Yeah, that's awful. I mean, just awful. And I've been there. I've never been there, but I've been 1% in that direction, and it's awful. And if you've never gone through it, I would have thought prior to going through it myself, I'd be like, well, it's just people on the internet. People are going to do that. Who cares? Don't let it get under your skin. And one way to think about it is maybe out of 100 comments like that, 99 of them you don't let get under your skin. But let's say 1 out of 100, 1%. It does get under your skin for some reason. Maybe it resonates somehow, or it just is one too many of these kinds of comments. And it not only gets under your skin, but it kind of opens the door for all the negativity to come in. It's rough. It is, I think, impossible as a regular human being to be able to have a thick skin against that kind of hatred. There are ways to cope with it. There are ways to minimize the damage, like not looking at it, for example. But it's impossible. We're social creatures. We depend on other people. This notion that somehow you can just be like, the haters are going to hate. That's a lovely sentiment, but it's just not true. If we evolved from a different animal that was less social, you could probably say that. Like if we evolved from tortoises or something. At least I'm not a biologist, but I'm pretty sure they're not very social. Don't quote me on that. And we probably would be like, who cares? Like I got my turtle shell, who cares? But we evolved from possibly the most social animal that's ever existed on this planet. There are so many things that have been selected for externally, internally, psychologically, biologically, that are oriented towards deeply, deeply caring and needing the approval of other people around us. The problem is now there are too many people around us. When we were evolving and existing during our natural environment for thousands and thousands of years, we would only come into contact, at least 90% of the time, with like 50 to 150 people in our tribe, people, our kin, our parents, our grandparents, our cousins, our other people in our lives. And it was easier for us to make sure we had their approval because we had enough time to get their approval. And they always approved of us because we were born into this tribe, and aunts and uncles, grandparents, and all of our tribe, they've always accepted me. And we have that self-assuredness, we have that safety, that security. Now, we come into for a lot of people, they might go for a week without seeing anyone in their life that they have a secure attachment with. And they're in contact with thousands and millions of people if you're on the internet a lot. And so you have no ability to know if you're approved of by these other people. Even if you work at a place where you have relationships, to some extent, friendships with people at work, but do you really know that they really approve of you the way that you would if you were born and raised and constantly around the same group of people? Well, it raises anxiety, and it raises our depression and physical issues, sleep issues. It's really known to us. And so when you are getting those kinds of comments online, and it gets under our skin because we're oriented that way. We can't help but to let that stuff in. It's very hard for us not to let that stuff in. And so when people are saying stuff like that, it's just awful. I have my hypotheses as to why that happens. Just to rattle some off the top of my head. There are psychopaths in the world who do not care about other people, and other people's feelings don't register to them. There are also sadists and sadistic psychopaths who actually get off on harming other people, and they are, according to research, more likely to participate online. In life, you might never run into one of these individuals that's a sadistic psychopath. Online, you probably have run into hundreds, if not thousands of them already in your lifetime. So that's another thing to think about is there are people who literally wake up in the morning and what gets you up in the morning? Answer that question for yourself. Pause the video. Like, what gets you up? What's top 5 things? Your work, your kids, fun things, going fishing, meals, or whatever it is that gets you up in the morning. There are some people, very rare individuals, we're talking like far less than 1% of people who are both sadistic and psychopathic. These individuals wake up in the morning and at the top of their list might be, I can't wait to harm other people. Literally. Their needs are based on harming other human beings in whatever way they can. And a very easy way you can harm people is online because of anonymity, right? Okay, so that's one possibility, but it's probably not a huge group of the people that are saying these kinds of things to people like Zanab. Another is that there's a wide variety of differentiation and maturity level. There are 10-year-olds on the internet and people who are prank calling, right? When I was a kid, I used to prank call, not very often, but once every 6 months, me and my friends would be like, "Ooh, let's do one prank call," and we just dial some random number and it's stupid. I regret doing that, but kids are gonna kid, I suppose. So there's that. There's also people, I think this is actually a pretty big group, is that hurt people, right? So a lot of us have been hurt and we have no way of processing that or healing from it or getting support around it. We might even continually be experiencing hurtful things in our marriages and at work and stuff. So we're just going through the day, hurt, cataloging, just building up mounds and mountains of hurt that have been going on our whole life, and we're looking for some way to deal with that. And one of the ways that can temporarily make us feel good is to bully someone else. And it doesn't feel that bad because, look, we're all doing this. Everyone is telling her that she should die and that she's a horrible person. And, it's justified because the crowd's doing it. Because another thing is we're looking for approval. It's like, well, it justifies, right? And I see a bunch of other people do, I'm going to pile on. Yeah, I see everyone is deciding that Zanab is the evil villain this year. So I'm going to go after her because it'll give me this 30-second boost in my self-esteem or 30-second reprieve from the hurt that I'm experiencing because I'm making someone else hurt. And in my, the person's mind, they're like, it doesn't really matter though because it's just online and they need to have a thick skin. And they asked for it because they went on a real, whatever justification they have, which I find to be abhorrent. Like somehow attacking someone sadistically has any kind of justification. Just like, anyway, so those are some of the top reasons that I would identify. I think another reason is just confusion. There's a lot of confusion in the world. People don't know. Or I think another reason is they don't know how to word things. Because I've experienced that as a commenter and as receiving comments is sometimes when you're in person, you'll pick up on nuances in the person's reaction. You'd be like, oh, well, yeah, I'm just saying that because you'll soften it if you're in person because you notice things. But online, you don't have it. So you just blah, blah, blah. And people will comment pretty harshly towards me sometimes. And then they'll follow up and say, I reread that comment and I realized that it tonally, although I wasn't lying. That is what I thought, but tonally, I think it's coming off wrong. And let me give some more context. So I think that's another reason. But yeah, I mean, threatening death threats and then telling her that they wish her parents, I think, were going to hell. I mean, my God, that's awful.
Just a bunch of people that watched a reality TV show and think that they can comment on your life. But you just can't. I think Colleen mentioned it in one of her interviews, like, you don't build thick skin overnight. And everyone's like, turns your comments off 1,000% because...
Yeah, I think the way I would word it, the way Colleen worded it, is you never really build thick skin entirely, but there's a shock. Because for myself, I benefited because I've been making content for 14 plus years. And you could argue before that, as a therapist for 10, 15 years prior to that, I was a therapist for 10 years prior to that, and as a professor for 10 years prior to that, I had been receiving feedback to a much lesser extent, right? I'd get feedback from my clients, feedback from my students, and it was very anxiety provoking. It's like, oh my God, I hope I'm a good professor. Oh my God, I hope I'm a good therapist. You go through that, but it's not very much feedback, and it's not very much negative feedback, and it's not very intense feedback. Then when I started the podcast, almost no one was watching my YouTube channel or listening to my podcast for the first 7 years of the podcast. I was at a very, very small audience, especially in the first year. You could argue that only my family and friends were watching the podcast back then. But I would occasionally, people would comment, and sometimes it was negative, but it would be like in the first year, I'd probably get, no joke, I would probably get one comment a month on all the content, and maybe one email every 3 months or something. It was very rare. So I had time to get, if I had a negative comment, I would have time to recover from that, right? And then as the popularity of the podcast started to grow, the comments became more frequent. So I had time to, but imagine being on this. So you could argue that for 25 plus years, I've been slowly becoming more and more accustomed. And I will tell you that it is rough. It is very hard for me to deal with negative comments. And at first I thought there's something wrong with me, and I think there is something mildly wrong with me. I think I have some relational traumas regarding criticism, and that's apparent. And, you can listen to all my episodes about my mild OCPD and all that stuff. That's there, and that will plague me. But I think there's a lot of my reactivity that is, I think, just human. And I've talked with a lot of other content providers, and I've heard a lot of different things. And some people will say, you just let it go. Like my co-host Umberto will get negative comments, and his first line that he'll say when asked is be like, I don't care. I used to participate on 4chan. I know that people attack people. I'm okay with it. But I think that's a facade. I know that's a facade. Underneath, he is affected by it. He does get hurt, and it does plague him, but just in a different kind of a way, or at least it's the way it manifests in different. And you just have a lot of ways of coping with it. That's him. There are other people that would say, but everyone is hurt by it, and everyone has a way of managing that hurt, or else they will stop making content. There were times in my life when I was not serious, but for a brief moment would just be like, I want to pack it in and stop the whole podcast and YouTube. I can't take this anymore. But anyway, it gets to you, and so I just can't imagine what it'd be like to not be an internet person, not to be a content provider, not to be given time, and then all of a sudden the show comes out. Netflix will just put the show out in a couple of weeks, and then boom, you're just getting millions, probably millions and millions of negative comments. That would be rough. And if you're ever able, only if you want to, in those comment sections, do what you can to either not participate in that, or maybe even to tamp it down a little bit and just be like, hey, people, you can say this or that, but that's going a little far. I get where you're coming from, but that's go. Or, hey, Zanab, you're getting some bad comments. I just want to say I agree with the sentiment that they're getting at. I do think that you were unfair to Cole, but I don't think you deserve to be treated this way. But I don't know. There's ways of getting your opinion out there without being sadistic.
Hate is so ugly, and then people that are actually saying nice things, trolls are going and bullying them too. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be a part of this, so I'm just going to turn it off.
With all the things in the world, you have corporations that are poisoning the earth with pollutants and particulates and pollution in the oceans and the rivers all over the world. You have politicians that are actively working against groups of people, traditionally oppressed individuals. You have just horrific things that are happening in real time around the world, and someone decides that they're going to not only bully Zanab, but people that are giving positive comments, and they actually want to ruin these people's lives. It's mind-boggling. 1, 2, I've experienced that before. And I've talked about this before, but the internet is relatively new. For you young people, you might have been born while the internet was a thing, so to you, it's always been around. It's relatively new. Our culture has not yet figured out how to deal with it, and is continuing to figure that out. And one of the things that was very present in the past was all bets are off on the internet. You can do whatever you want. It's the Wild West. And I remember actually liking the internet for that aspect in the late 90s or mid-late 90s, early aughts. But as time went on, I and others started to be, well, I don't know if that's such a great thing. There's some problems there, right? And we still have that legacy that I think is beginning to change kind of, but still highly prevalent in our culture that, look, it's the internet. and you're a famous person. You chose to go on a reality TV show. You deserve it. You should not be on a reality TV show if you can't handle it. That's just the way things are. That's the way I want the internet to be for me. And then when anyone pushes back and says, hey, take it easy. That's a human being. There's this justification of the crowd that gets, no, I get to say whatever I want to say. You know, I'm more familiar with this in the 90 Day Fiancé world because I watch that. You know, I've been watching that show for almost 3 years now and posting stuff on the internet. And there are pockets of commentary on the internet that are like that believe as a principle, as a foundation of human rights, that you should be able to attack these individuals because it's reality TV and that's what you get to do. And particularly for the 90 Day Fiancé people, I just feel like a lot of these people are fairly underprivileged, and to just feel like you have license to attack them. Anyway, so that needs to change, that culture. You know, all of us can do what we can do individually about our own choices and our own little tiny pockets of the internet. But what we really need to do is change the whole culture, right? Like when you see homophobic jokes on TV shows like Friends, for example, when I watch that show, sometimes me and my wife will watch, because it's always rerunning on Nickelodeon, I think. So it'll just be mindlessly, let's just watch some Friends. And there's some pretty egregious homophobia in that show. At the time, in the 90s, when I first saw those jokes, it didn't really register to me. Now, I'm straight, so it wouldn't necessarily. But even though I'm straight now, I watch those jokes, it physically hurts me. I'm just like, oh, that's homophobia. That's awful. You know. Now, why did that change? Well, because the culture changed, and thus my awareness changed. It's not just culture. I became a therapist, went through a lot of graduate school. There's a fair amount of talk about this sort of thing. But in addition, the culture changed. The jokes feel different. So now we're in a situation where those kinds of hateful comments, to the vast majority, it's just a given that behavior is okay. We need to change that. I'm pretty sure, or hopeful anyway, in 20, 30, 40 years, that will not be the case. They will look back in the same way that today people will cringe, hopefully, at the homophobia in Friends. In 30 years, they will look back at the sort of comments that people like Zanab were getting, and they will cringe. They'll be like, oh my God. Whereas a lot of people don't cringe. They will say, yeah, let her have it. She deserves it. That's not okay.
Till y'all calm down or can act right. But
also, like, why I don't get the thing. Like, if you're being bombarded with negativity, why would you not turn your comments off? Yeah, I'm removing negativity from my life so that I can live a better one.
1000%. Like, that's one thing I've worked on the past year, is just red flags, seeing them, like, dipping, healthy boundaries for people.
Yeah, there's so much. I had no idea that I was going to talk this much. I've been talking forever about this interview. I thought, maybe there'll be 5 minutes and I'll watch a different, but I don't know. I'm such a yammerer. But yeah, there's so much to say about this. I won't go into full detail because I could talk about just what they said about turning off comments for a long time. But in brief, I was like that too years ago. I would get on some episodes, just on a couple episodes, there'd be certain topics that would, for whatever reason, it would not only get a lot of views. This is before I had a bigger audience. I had a smaller audience. It was there, not particularly on YouTube, but sometimes I'd post an episode on YouTube and I just get flooded with all these new people and lots of comments and lots of negativity. People that I believe just misunderstood the situation or had a lot of arrogance and hubris. And so I thought, well, I hear you. I don't agree with you. And these people seem to be mobbing my comment section and attacking some of my ongoing, more dedicated listeners, right? And I'm like, well, I'll just turn off the comments because this is my YouTube channel. This is my episode. People can obviously say whatever they want to on other places. They can go to Reddit or they can go on other YouTube videos and they can verbally talk with their friends. It's a free country. They can say what they want, obviously within reason. So I'm not saying they can't say something, but on my channel, on my video, I'm not going to, because there were mobs of people that seemingly would use the comment section as a way of, I don't know, like bullying not only me, but people I was interviewing, other people in the comment section, but also kind of the world. It just seemed like people would say, oh, this episode's getting a lot of attention. People will automatically look at the comment section, and I'm going to be able to get my voice out, because there's a certain tone that people have. They seem to be like in that direction. I don't know. But I just thought, look, there's a lot of negativity here. They're entitled to their opinion. They're not entitled to do this, particularly to the other listeners that are commenting and trying to be more rational here. So I'm just going to turn off the comments. I would get massive amounts of criticism for turning off comments. And I never understood that. Because as a person on the internet myself, I don't comment on things very often. And certainly I will sometimes see on a YouTube channel or a newspaper article, I'll see that the comment section has been turned off. And I don't personally feel attacked by that. I just think, must be a real controversial issue, or they forgot to turn it on, or they don't allow comments on this website, or who knows. I don't care. But some people take it as a personal attack when you don't let them comment. Now, to be clear, people are allowed to comment everywhere else on the internet except for just that one tiny little URL. That's where they can't comment, but they can comment anywhere else. And that's a personal attack on their right to free speech. I mean, the anger and the hostility, it would become tenfold from there. It was strange to me. It was very normal to a whole group of people. Maybe that's even normal to you. It could be an age thing. I don't know. But that's what I'll say that. The other thing is if anyone ever wants to turn off their comments, I say go for it. But somehow you might be inviting more bullying if you do that. Anyway, so she's saying that she apparently turned off her comments. Does she have a YouTube channel or something? I don't know. And Anthony is saying, yeah, it makes sense that you do that. And she's saying, yeah, I'm drawing boundaries. And I say, absolutely. Particularly given what she's saying people were saying. And the things that I've seen a lot of people saying about her, yeah.
Like, why? I don't get the thing. Like, if you're being bombarded with negativity, why would you not turn your comments off? Yeah, I'm removing negativity from my life so that I can live a better one.
1000%. Like, that's one thing I've worked on the past year is just red flags, seeing them, like dipping, healthy boundaries for people, and just not being a people pleaser, doing what everyone expects me to do. And 100%, like, I was like, this is my page. Yes, it can be public and you can look at pictures, but 11,000 comments of hate and you're bullying people. Like, people were messaging me and like, hey girl, I think the world of you. I had to take my comment down because my notifications were blowing up, but I don't want you to think like I still think this, and this.
Right. I remember thinking that myself. It's like, this is my page, and I'm not going to, you can say what you want other places, but on my page, you can't use my page to not only bully me, but to bully other people. Like, you can, I guess you can bully them other places, but not on my page, which I totally agree with her on that. Apparently, there's a whole section of the internet that considers that to be abhorrent, that someone would turn off. And now that I think about it, I have heard minor rumblings about her maybe it was on Instagram that she turned her comments. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. And that people conclude that indicates that she's a horrible person, and that it admits that she's guilty, right? That to turn off your comments, it means you're not open to feedback or something. And it's like, yeah, this is silly. Now, I'm imagining what people would say in response to what I'm saying. I can imagine someone saying, perhaps rationally, well, I think she needs to know what she did. If you believe the Cole narrative, the pro-Cole narrative, and you're thinking, well, she needs to know what she did was unfair to him. She treated him unfairly. That was not, because I think someone even said this, or maybe I said it, that imagine if the genders were reversed. It's not always a direct analogy, but just imagine for the sake of argument that Cole did that. That Cole goes on the altar and says no first and just blasts her in the same way, in the same tone, same intensity, and then walks off and people are clapping. I think there would be a different reaction. I don't know, but I think there would be. So, but maybe not. Anyway, point is that I think some people might say, no, she did something wrong, and she needs to know that she did something wrong because that's justice, right? Okay, but it's the internet. It's reality TV. Justice is probably not attainable. At the very least, it's not likely. And with the amount of extreme negativity that these individuals get, I don't think the rational calls for justice are even perceived by these individuals, because it's just drowned out by the death threats and telling her that they hope her parents are in hell or something like that. So I think it's a fool's errand that we as the public can think that we can somehow affect what's really happening. Plus, it's a fool's errand to believe that we know what really happened. I mean, that's what she's been saying this, but I'll bolster that the way that we see it, there might be some truth to it. But if we really knew what was going on and we had an opportunity to be there, to talk with them at length, the nuances that we would learn and the depth to the story would just be so much greater than what we understand now. And to make conclusions based on just the thin layer of data that we have from the show is, it's foolish.
About you, like, you're great, I don't take it back. And I'm like, this is pathetic. And yeah, I shut him off. Like,
I mean, I just think
now, but I will never ever respond to hate with hate. You're expecting to get a rise out back of mention, not gonna happen. Like, go talk trash about me on some other page, it's really not a thing. Like, it's really not a thing. Again, I did the work the past year and a half to prepare myself as much as I could for this, even though I still wasn't prepared. None of us were. But yeah, I just won't. I don't do bullying. I won't do it. Everyone's like, seek help. I'm like, I hope you heal. Like, you're writing such ugly things about someone.
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you're writing get help. But now I'm sure some people were saying that they hope that she is able to find healing and therapy, and they weren't doing it in a bullying way. But we can imagine that a lot of people were. And yeah, it's a great response. It's just like, okay, you're telling me that I need therapy? Look at what you're doing here. You're making a lot of assumptions, and you have a lot of anger, which probably points to a lot of hurt. So I hope you get therapy.
Like, how did we let you get away with murder and then you just like shit all over your own community? I just think it's awful.
Yeah, lots of hypocrites. Lots of hypocrites. And also, like, those people can also, like, people learned new words this season. Narcissist, manipulator, gaslighter, all these things. Go take a Psych 101 class or pick up a psych book.
Yeah. Wasn't this season. I don't know if she's just saying it for effect, but people have been misusing narcissist, gaslighting. What's the other word she said? Bipolar. She didn't mention that, but that as well. People have been misusing those terms for years and years. Narcissism and gaslighting is more recent. Now, taking a Psych 101 course would not cover it, particularly for narcissistic personality disorder and for gaslighting. Those two, and maybe even bipolar. Bipolar is pretty hard to understand if you even read the criteria. But for things like narcissistic personality disorder, or any personality disorder for that matter, things like gaslighting, topics related to intimate partner violence, these take years and years of study and clinical work and supervision and talking with people to really understand. So that's a fact. And when we study this, even among clinicians, specifically the topic of narcissistic personality disorder, I can't remember the exact stats, so don't quote me on this, but there are a number of studies. But one study I remember found that 50% of clinicians misdiagnosed people with narcissistic personality disorder, meaning that they're inept at diagnosing people with narcissistic personality disorder and don't even know that they're inept at it, because it's very complicated. And unless you study it, because you can go through a lot of graduate school, you can do a lot of clinical work, and never have the depth of education and experience and supervision and mentorship required to even begin to understand any of the personality disorders, let alone narcissistic personality disorder. So going to Psycho 101 would not teach you those topics at all.
Because, promise you, 99.9% of these people don't know what the word means. And, like, when my mental health was questioned, like, everyone's like, you humiliated him in front of the world. I'm like, my mental health was questioned in front of the world. I've gotten so many messages like, you have this, and I'm legit screenshotting them, sending them straight to my therapist. I'm like, what about this one? And he's like, you every week for the past year. We're good here.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. There was really no indication of any mental disorder presented on the show. Of course, I can't know if she suffers from something or not, but yeah, there's no viable argument from anyone watching the show and concluding that she has any sort of disorder. Just not even hints of any. Now, she could, but nothing on the show indicated that at all. So I'm glad she has her therapist that is in her corner and really helping her with that. Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you so much for hopping on here today. I really.
All right, well, that is it for that interview. People have informed me that on this channel, Jillet Slays, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, Anthony has interviewed other cast members, so I'll watch that. I imagine I'll have less yammering to do with the other individuals, but we'll see. And tune in next time and when I do that. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.